Welcome to On the Bubble Podcast, episode 45. I'm your host, Sabasa J. Weda, and with me is my co-host, Yuki Lee Bender. Today, we're going to have a relaxing day. We're just going to be talking about Calling Birmingham and the CC meta going into U.S. Nationals or Calling Las Vegas. This episode's probably going to go up like sometime next week. So for the listeners, it should be around August 9th, August 10th, which is about 2 weeks until the US Nats. So let's break down Calling Birmingham. Actually, before we do that, how was your week, Yuki?
Yeah, my week's been good. Playing a lot of skirmish. It turns out that our area has all the skirmishes on this weekend. Like we had a Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, and they were all draft, which was fun and like a lot of good draft practice for Nats coming up. But we also just don't have any skirmishes the following weeks, which is kind of funny. I guess all the stores decided to run it on the first week here. So it's been, a lot of skirmish. It's been fun doing a lot of Monarch drafts and I think I'm starting to feel pretty good about the format, which is good.
How did you do in the skirmish? Did you win any of the Cold Foil Genesises?
Yeah, I won a skirmish yesterday. I 3-0'd on chain in a 4-person pod. So, peak practice there. And then I think I 4-2'd my other skirmishes. Oh, no, I 4-2'd a skirmish, and then the other one was like kind of weird. We had 8 people, and we played one draft as Swiss, which basically determines seeding and who gets to go first or second. And then I lost immediately in top 8 to banishing bad cards.
That's fair.
So yeah, I don't know how that would have wound up. I think my deck was like pretty good. Like I might have ended up like 5-1 or 4-2 kind of thing. So feeling pretty good. So like a 4-2, a 4-2, and a 3-0, something like that, or a 5-1, a 4-2, and a 3-0. So yeah, feeling pretty confident. I know you played some skirmishes. How did you end up doing?
I did quite bad this skirmish. I played just 2. I played one yesterday, which was the one draft, and I played the 8-man one that you were talking about on Saturday. I ended up going 1-2 in the draft portion, and then I lost my first round of the top 8 question mark. Yeah, I just got smushed by the Bolton deck in the top 8 game, and I was just like, the game was kind of close, except it was like impossible to win the against the Gantry Gold, so just like kind of blew up.
Yeah. How are you feeling about Monarch draft going into nationals?
So I'm actually not sure. I was on Force Prism, and then I was trying to Force Prism yesterday, and then I ended up on Levia because I got past Red Dread Screamer, Growl, Hooves, all red, and I was like, okay, like I guess this is like a signal for me to go into Levia. I ended up getting cut, and my deck was like probably like a solid 7 out of 10, and I ended up going 2-1. So no, I went 1-2 actually. I died on the last game. Yeah, I don't know. It's I think I like after that it made me realize like, yeah, I probably should have just forced Prism and just had like B Prism number 3 with the worst Prism deck, and I probably would have like 2-1.
Mm-hmm.
But it's weird. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that Jay and I were kind of talking about after the skirmish that maybe we can share before we jump into the main topic here was that it feels like one of the things that strikes me about Monarch Draft is that the decks are like so synergistic and powerful when they do their thing that it just feels like there's so many ways you can just lose in this format, and it feels like significantly more so than a lot of other formats. Like if Bolton just does a V turn, you just die. Or if Chain like has like the nuts chain deck and has like a bunch of shackles and just like in one of the skirmishes, I died to one of our locals on shackle 4, so he's not even at his pitch shack. On shackle 4, he attacked me for like 23 damage, and this is with me stopping multiple points of arcane damage to turn off his like 3 rips and vanish, and it just didn't matter. Like he still hit me for like 23 24 damage through all of that, and had I not stopped the arcane, it would have been like 27 28 damage. And there's just like nothing that you can do to win those games, and that kind of feels like I don't want to say that's like necessarily like a bad thing, but it does feel like something that feels kind of distinct about Monarch, and that like yeah, there's just like a little bit more like explosiveness and variance in the format it feels like, and it just feels like to some degree you kind of, at least my experience is like you kind of need to get lucky to 3-0. Like you need to like be that like one of the, whatever hero it is, and hope that that works out for you, or you know the gameplay goes your way. But it just seems like there's a lot that can happen in terms of like chain shackles, Levia's banishes, the way that, I don't know, the pod breaks down and somebody has like a nutso deck. There's just like a lot of ways that can feel a little bit out of your control, and sometimes that 3-0 can feel, I don't know. I've 3-0'd with decks that I didn't think I was going to 3-0 with, and I've lost with decks that I thought were 3-0 decks, and it's just sort of, I just never know anymore with Monarch.
This format feels kind of high variance in
Mhm.
lots of different ways. One of it being the draft portion, where if the cards that you are looking for don't get opened, but cards that other people are looking for get opened, you're gonna be in like a lot of like trouble. But I feel like so many of these games just like end up coming down to like a prison player and having a red spears into a red herald and you don't have a popper that turn. Or if you're the prison player, you go red spears into try and go play the next big red herald and they just have a popper and you're like, oh, okay. Like I guess I guess that's what happened. Like I'm dead now, or like they're gonna come back at me for too much, and I can't come back into the game. So it's like it feels like a lot of the mechanics are there to give the most like high rolly aspects for all the decks. You have a V of the Vanguard with like two late cards in your hand, you're probably gonna win that game. But if you don't draw it and the V of the Vanguard is in the bottom of your deck for some reason, you're gonna lose that game. Like for example, I had a game where my opponent played a belittle, and then after the game, they're just like, "Man, I don't know why I didn't draw my V of the Vanguard." And I'm just like, "Oh, what must have happened was the V of the Vanguard was like is close to the top of your deck, but you played belittle and shuffled your deck, and then you put it back to the bottom of your deck, so you didn't draw the V of the Vanguard, so you lost the game."
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting.
If they just didn't play belittle to search, like if they just played straight belittle no search, they would have drawn V in the next two turn guaranteed, and they would have killed me.
Right. Yeah. And there's often like not that much way to know if that's going to happen.
Well, you kind of do know if it's
I
your
guess in
turn
like that
five.
exact case, but like sometimes it's like, I don't know.
It was kind of funny though, because like I was talking about it after the game, and we're just like, "Huh, what happened?" And they're like, "Oh, you have a V in your deck," and we came to the because we played a lot of turns. We played like 9-10 turns, right?
Yeah.
And they just never drew it, which just we're just like, "Oh, maybe in Bolton, if you have a V and if you need to draw it, you just don't search with belittle." Like it's like the most big mega brain thing I've ever heard. Like come up in a discussion for this format.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting things that happen with shuffle effects in Flesh and Blood, and like shuffling. I think because you are pitching cards to the bottom, shuffling has more of an effect on your deck in Flesh and Blood than it does in a game like, I don't know, Magic the Gathering, where you like maybe you opt a couple cards to the bottom throughout the game, but like really like generally shuffling your deck doesn't do a whole lot most of the time unless you've done a bunch of stuff to manipulate your deck. But in Fab you're constantly pitching, and there's a lot to consider there. You're often increasing your blue density when you shuffle, for example, like effectively increasing it because you're shuffling more blues into your deck and dispersing them again, and possibly avoiding those power cards that you would otherwise see because you see so much of your deck in most games in Fab.
You want to move on to our main topic for today?
Yeah.
So let's start by talking about calling Birmingham. Let's talk about the top eight. So what top eight did calling Birmingham, Yuki?
Yeah, so a bit of a surprise here. We saw a fairly diverse top eight with 3 Bravo, 1 Icelander, 2 Katsu, 1 Uzuri, and 1 Azalea. I think notable decks that were absent here was no Lexis, no Dromais. Those were 2 big decks that people were talking about. No Levia is another deck that's been kind of popular and topping here and there. So a little bit of a different top 8 than what we've been used to seeing, and a pretty good range of heroes there. In the finals, we ended up seeing Pablo on Bravo, shout out to Pablo Pintor topping yet another major event. Just, clearly one of the most consistent players in the game at this point. And then Samuel on Icelander. And the Icelander did end up taking it down in a really interesting game. If you haven't watched it, I'd encourage you to go do so. It was quite an entertaining one. It was like a lot of back and forth in it, and it was quite a close match overall.
Where can I watch it? Actually, I actually haven't watched this game yet. Where do we watch it?
Yeah, you can watch it on YouTube on, I think it's Tabletop 24's channel. We can put a link to that in the comments down below, but they have it all available on YouTube and all of day one and all of day two and top eight as well. And it's all commentated by the Push the Point guys, Hamish and I forget who else is on the commentary team there, but they did a fantastic job. Really, really good coverage. And they had these like player interviews in between some of the episodes too, where, different players in the community just had a short recording and recorded something and put it up there. I had a short recording in there, and I think they said there was like over 70 people who recorded something and had them kind of just in the intermission, which was a nice little touch.
Yeah, that's actually such a good idea for the lots of dead time in between each round. Some of these rounds and these callings can be quite long, and if there's like nothing going on the screen, then you might tab out or click out, and that's a good way to keep people on engaged at least.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is is it the third Icelander that's won a calling in this like last month?
Well, this is the first calling we've had since Dusk Till Dawn, but we did see Rhea Adams win on an Arcane Icelander in I believe it was Chicago and Cincinnati, the two battle hardens back to back, which was quite the feat. And then we see another Icelander taking down Calling Birmingham, which was kind of like the largest event that we've seen so far. Notably, Sam's Icelander was not one of the Arcane Icelanders like what we saw Rhea running. Instead, it was much more of a traditional Wounded Bull Icelander, pretty much just slotting in, I believe, in case. I don't even think this deck list had Warmongers from what I could see, which was really interesting to see. So yeah, just like a very standard Bullander list. And yeah, I guess it worked, clearly.
Yeah, kind of surprising that like Icelander is the deck that's been like just winning events like every week. Basically, I've been surprised every single time. I'm just like, I hear, oh, there's an event this weekend. Well, one, and then they're just like Icelander, and I'm like, what? Where did Icelander come from? Like she was never in any discussions or talks that I've been involved with, and they're just like Icelander won. Oh, next week Icelander won. This week Icelander won. It's like where does these Icelanders come from? Like this is crazy.
So I think the big thing holding Icelander down in the Outsiders meta for like Baltimore and all of that was just how bad the Ranger matchup was. Lexi as well as Azalea, but I think primarily Lexi. And maybe we can talk about it in the in the kind of like overall breakdown of the event. But Lexi is still really represented, but notably, like there was no Lexis in this top eight. I don't think that necessarily means that Lexi is a bad deck or you can discount her or that people won't play her still. I think she's still really powerful, but clearly with the Bullseye Bracers ban and maybe with Warmonger's Diplomacy being introduced into the format, it seems like people are able to beat Lexi, at least if they kind of build their deck with a good game plan into her. And I feel like Icelander is kind of capitalizing on a lot of that and saying, you know what, not only do I have a little bit better game into Lexi myself, so it's not like, maybe I don't think it's a great matchup for Icelander, but I think it's winnable. But also there's all these other decks that can prey on Lexi now, and I can prey on all of those decks. So I think that's a lot of what we've been seeing from these Icelander players, because Icelander was a really good deck for a really long time. So it's cool to see it come back.
And didn't Bullseye Bracers also had Arcane Barrier 1? And I'm assuming you don't play Arcane Barrier 1 in your arm piece anymore, right?
Yeah, so I think most Lexis have adopted Null Rune gloves because your other gloves is just Hornet Sting, and that's been kind of the glove of choice, and you do run it because it's a breakpoint. It can help with those breakpoints, and it can like pop an Ashwing or something. But most people have been starting to side in Null Rune gloves from what I've seen, just to respect Icelander a little bit. But the big thing is just not having that extra reach of the bullseye load on a Rain Razor's turn really changes the dynamic of the game, because it felt like Lexi could kind of like slam the door shut on Icelander, much in the way that like Fi would before with Pouncing Links, where it's just like, I'm going to hit you so hard and make the life deficit so big that you can never really come back. Lexi was really able to do that. And with the loss of bullseye bracers, I think Lexi's still good into Icelander, but I think it's closer. It's a more interesting matchup now.
Yeah, the game is more fair now.
Yeah. And that's sort of exactly what Icelander wants, right? She just wants to trade life totals, keep them close, just play this long game and just kind of slowly whittle both players down. And if we're both at like single digit life totals, then I win the game pretty much no matter what. Is basically what Icelander's saying. And, you know, losing an equipment slot that can push 7 damage out of nowhere is, yeah, it's going to help her out a lot.
It's kind of sick that LSS actually got the banning right on Lexi, actually, of like banning bullseye bracers actually made a lot of these matchups a little bit closer for Lexi to be like not extremely dominant, but like didn't actually take her out of like the top deck contention. So kind of sick that they nailed this banning actually.
Yeah, it is looking to be a pretty interesting ban overall. We saw her have success in the earlier battle hardens, and it's sort of interesting to talk about like how successful is Lexi in this event. Maybe we can jump into some of the other data now and start to touch on some of that, because I think that it's easy to look at this event and go, well, there was no Lexi in the top 8, so Lexi's not a good deck. And I think that's maybe missing the point a little bit. So first off, let's talk about the most represented decks in just overall in Calling Birmingham.
So looks like Calling Birmingham, the most represented deck was Lexi at 67 players, bringing it to the event. Next represented will be Dromai at 48, Bravo at 44, Briar at 40, and Levia at 39. And then there's a fall off from there. But Katsu's still 29 players. But let's just talk about the top three first, and we're still on the topic of Lexi. So let's talk about her first.
Yeah, so Lexi, by far the most represented at 67 total players, bringing her 23 of those players also day two'd, which gives her a 34% conversion rate to day two. And this is actually the highest day two conversion rate. Just kind of reading through the conversion rates, we have Lexi at 34%, Kano at 33%, but there was only 3 Kanos, so take it with a grain of salt. Icelander doing very well with 30%, Bravo with 29.5, Uzuri with 28.5, Reinar actually with 25, Dromai at 23%, and then kind of a little bit of a fall off. There's a bunch of decks at 20%. Notably, though, Levia all the way down at 13%, so not having the best results there for Levia converting to day two. But I guess all of this is to say that even though Lexi didn't top 8, she did do very well in her day two conversion rate. And that is impressive. And if we kind of dig into some of the day two data, we see that trend kind of carries through for most of the brackets. In top 64, there was 17 Lexis, which is 27% of the top 64 is Lexi. Top 32, there's still 9 Lexis. That's 28% of the top 32. And then a bit of a fall off in the top 16 at 13% of the top 16, or 2 Lexis being present. So I think overall there was like 6 Lexis at 9-3, would it be?
12
9-4?
rounds, yeah, 9-3.
9-3, yeah. So 9 points, and you needed 10-2 to top 8. So a lot of Lexi's just one win away from the top 8 there. And I think all of that is to say that like I think some of these decks had good game plans into Lexi for the weekend, but Lexi was still very much there in force, and a deck that people had to have a game plan into, and still performed really well by every metric pretty much other than top 8. Do you have any thoughts about Lexi when you see this data? That's sort of my interpretation, but yours might be different.
Yeah, so I feel like Lexi, I talked about this a little bit before the show as well. To explain myself, I think Lexi might have a little bit of a problem of trying to win an event like Callings, where you have to play multiple rounds and have like a record like 11-1, or like let's say 10-1 going into the last round would probably be ideal. And the reason I think that is like maybe not it's not as like before Lexi would have like this like really bad, basically like a percentage of time where they would implode and they would just lose to themselves by drawing too many arrows or too many three of a kinds, too many rain razors, just like the wrong combination of cards. I think that doesn't happen as much anymore, but looking at these kinds of data points, unlike Battle Hardens where you only have to play like 9 rounds, or like Pro Tours where you can afford an extra loss, I feel like Lexi might have that, just like a percentage of games, like maybe it's like 10% or like 12% of games where they might just lose to themselves. And which is why I kind of have a feeling where it might be difficult to top 8 callings with Lexi, mostly with the ban of Bullseye Bracers.
One of the things we talked about is that compared to a lot of these heroes in top eight, Lexi's still quite a consistent deck, but maybe not quite as reliable as like your Bravo, your Icelander, even your Azuri. You know, maybe comparable to Katsu, but does have like a little bit of that aggro deck going on where you can draw too many blues, draw too many reds, you have all that going on. You're a little bit less stable than some of these other strategies. And so, you know, maybe that is also a reason we didn't see Lexi in this event. I'd be really curious to see if like we could just see this exact same metagame and same decks like played again like multiple times, like how that would fall out. But of course, you know, we don't get to see that. But yeah, I'm curious if it's just sort of variance in the way the matchups went, or if there is some kind of like greater inconsistency there. It's a little hard to say for sure.
Yeah, it's so sick because like 13 rounds, or sorry, 12 rounds in this event, that's not like that big of a sample size, right? Like in the
Mm-hmm.
grand scheme of things, like we're like in the views of statistics, like you need like hundreds of data points or thousands of data points, and one calling is like nowhere close to enough to like actually have a meaningful point of data. Like Kano having a 33% conversion rate, but that's from 3 Kanos entering the event and 1 making day 2. So like I don't know if that 33% actually like it could have been 25% if one more Kano decided to sign up for the event, or it could have been 50% if one of those Kanos didn't sign up for the event. So it is all of these numbers that we are talking about, it's like they could flip. Like we could have had 4 Bravos in top 8, it could have 5 Bravos in top 8 by like, you know, one person making one mistake, one misplay, or like, you know, maybe someone wrote their life totals wrong. We just don't know everything that happened in these events. But what we do know though is that in this game, like Flesh and Blood is kind of consistent. Even if we run this multiple times, I have a feeling that we're gonna see these Bravo decks in top 8. We're gonna see. I'm not sure about the Azuri and Azalea, but I'm pretty sure we're gonna see an Icelander in top 8 again, or Katsu in the top 8. And I kind of think, maybe I'm moving too far along, but I kind of think those decks actually might perform well in the next calling too, which would be Calling Vegas.
Yeah, they're definitely looking like strong choices. I think in particular Bravo and Icelander are. Maybe we can talk very briefly about those decks and how they performed as well. So Bravo, third most represented, 44 Bravos overall, 13 of them making day 2 for a 30% day 2 conversion rate. Very good. Fourth best performing deck in terms of day 2 conversions. Of course, 3 in top 8 is incredible. And pretty much all the way along the road, Bravo did pretty well. There was 9 Bravos in the top 64, 7 Bravos in the top 32, and 5 Bravos in the top 16. So by every metric, whether it's day 2 or top whatever you like, Bravo did really well this weekend. And I think that that is one thing that is very, very clear. One of the standouts from the Bravo decks that I saw that Pablo Pintor had, and I believe some of the other Bravo, at least one of the other Bravos at the top tables had, was Blue Findle's Fighting Spirit. This is a 3-cost blue, so it turns on your Titan's Fist and all your 3-cost matter stuff. And it blocks 2, but it gains a life, which is actually a pretty nice spot to be against Lexi, who has a lot of these 5-power arrows that have on hits. So you can actually now block something like a Heat Seeker or an Infecting Shot with a 3-block and a Blue Findle's Fighting Spirit and actually gain a life. And maybe this is like part of part of the edge that they had. This and Warmonger's Diplomacy were kind of like the main innovations that I saw in this event, and then otherwise, like, Sinks, Fates, Staunches, a lot of what you'd expect, and of course Starstruck, the new card. I'm sure helping Bravo out a ton. That card's very good.
Let's talk a little bit about Starstruck. What was the condition to trigger Unity? Or what is the condition to trigger Unity?
So Unity says if you defend with it and another card from hand, you get some effect. And in Starstruck's case, that is a Seismic Surge. This opens up some lines like you can block 2 cards, pitch a blue Chokeslam. If you already have a Seismic Surge, you can block 2 cards, pitch a blue Spinal Crush. It can be your Seismic Surge to turn on Crippling Crush. If you have I saw this line come up. There's a Crippling Crush in Arsenal. You block with a card, you block with Starstruck, you get a Seismic Surge, you pitch 2 blues, Crippling Crush. So on defense, very good. That extra resource can really, really matter. It can be worth an entire card sometimes. And then on offense, it's also this threat that, it's just like another crush effect that is pretty good into a lot of decks, including Lexi. That if it crushes for 4, turning off all 4 or less power attacks is a big deal.
Yeah, that's against some decks. That's like every attack. Is it base power or is it
base power?
Oh, that's so gross. It, like back in the day, Chain would get completely stopped by this card. Every card in the deck attacked for 3. My God.
And it's also a yellow. So yellows aren't blues and yellows get kind of dunked on. But I think when the deck does so many other things well, it being a yellow is pretty big upside. We kind of see this with Codex of Frailty, where the card's amazing, but you can also pitch it for yellow, which just feels so premium. And I think the same thing is going on here. You can pitch this and a blue to play your Spinal Crush, and that's pretty good. Or you can play this, pitch this, play a Zealous, and then go into Hammer. That's all really strong. So it being a yellow is just kind of icing on the cake for this card. I think it just kind of does everything Bravo wants, and I'm pretty sure that I'd have to imagine that Bravos are just playing this in every matchup now.
That's kind of fair. Honestly, looking at these results from this calling and you talking about Bravo, I kind of think I know what I'm gonna bring to Calling Vegas now. This deck, when I first looked at it, I was just like, oh, it looks kind of normal. And then now that you talk about it, and I'm just like, okay, this deck kind of looks like it's kind of okay. It's, man, you're pushing this deck higher and higher and higher up my I should probably bring this to Calling Vegas.
Yeah, I think Bravo is in the group of decks that I would say if somebody is bringing Bravo, that's a totally reasonable choice, and you're probably making a good decision. If you know how to play Bravo, you like Bravo, I think you should feel okay about bringing them to events. I'm sure that people will look at these Bravo lists and try to start adapting, but we've seen this with Guardian time and time again. The deck is just so flexible. It blocks well, it plays offense well, it is so consistent, it's so adaptable. I think that Bravo is just going to be a solid choice no matter what, and just very consistent, very reliable, which has shown time and time again to be really good in Flesh and Blood, actually.
Okay, I guess I put my dash away. Yeah, well, actually, we'll talk about Dash a little bit, way later in the episode. But yeah, I had all my Dash cards ready. Now, I might go back into the box, and I think I need to pull out not the Starstrucks. I actually don't own Starstrucks yet, but the Showtimes and the Mucho Grandes. Yeah. So what? Other than the Bravo, Lexi, Icelander, do you have any other of the decks you want to talk about that either top aided or did particularly well in this event?
Yeah, there's a few others I think that we should touch on. I think there's some interesting data here for Icelander, where Icelander pretty good overall. The 7 Icelanders made day 2 out of 23 of them, so it's a 30% conversion. But notably, when we go into the other data, Icelander kind of falling off. There's 4 Icelanders in the top 64, and then only 1 in the top 32. And that's the one that top aided. So to me, this kind of says that I think the Lexi matchup is still problematic for Icelander, and I think Icelander has that thing that she's always had, where she has a lot of very close matchups that you have to work hard in, and if you really, really know the deck, you can get rewarded. But I think that even though Icelander has been winning these events, I would say that it's probably a good deck to play if you're really comfortable with it, but I don't know if it's a deck that I would just pick up and go, oh yeah, I can pilot Iyslander. I think people that really know their way around Iyslander are going to have an okay time with her and be able to bring her and do well. But I think that the deck is not so clearly tier one or like S tier as it used to be. And I do think that like that Lexi matchup is still pretty scary. And I gotta like it's interesting to me that all the Lexis were kind of in the top 32 and top 64. And that's kind of where the Icelanders fell off. And that's all in the same bracket. So kind of suggesting to me that maybe the Icelanders are still struggling into Lexi a little bit, but that's largely speculation. So who knows?
Honestly, Icelander's a hard deck to play. Like, there's just so many options. Like, I think Icelander is the deck with the most amount of options on every single turn, including like blocking, doing arcane damage, doing physical damage. It's just like there's just so many options, and it's not as clear cut as like, oh, I can just wounded bull here. Like sometimes like that's not the right line. You might just need to arsenal it so you have like a bigger turn the turn after, or like you need to block out stuff. It's that's definitely a difficult deck to play. That being said, if you just want to prove Yuki wrong and you can just like pilot the deck perfectly on your first try, I think you should try it, dude. I think if you're confident, that's what I always do. Is like I feel like I'm confident in Oldham. Like, zero play testing with the deck. I think I can do it. Let's go.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to discourage anyone from bringing Icelander, but I do think it is a deck that rewards reps and is quite challenging. What do you think about Uzuri?
Uzuri, I fell off of this deck quite early in the meta. I like tried it a couple times and then like I basically put it down. I just didn't understand what Uzuri does better than Oldham. And after Oldham LL'd, I still didn't really understand what Uzuri did better than basically any of the other heroes. It's like a kind of this weird defensive, tricky, low power level disruption deck.
Yeah,
From what you've told me, Uzuri crushes Lexi, and what was the other deck you said it crushes?
Azalea. Uzuri really good into Ranger. Like really, really, really good into Ranger. You have these like isolates with these on hits. Ranger doesn't have any armor. You have a bunch of arsenal disruption. You have a bunch of frailty tokens. Like you make Ranger real miserable. But I think your Bravo matchup's tough if the Bravo's strong. I think your Icelander matchup seems tough to me. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but that matchup doesn't seem great. And Dromai just seems miserable, to be honest. You do have poppers, but you're just so bad at clearing the dragons, and you kind of need your poppers as threats, and you're not like it's hard to imagine pushing 40 damage through all her blocks and through all her armor and managing her dragons all at the same time. Like I haven't seen it happen in gameplay, and I don't can't really think of a way of doing that when I think about the deck and the way that it's built, at least currently.
Trying to think that they have to spend 2 resources to kill a Ashwing kind of makes me cringe.
Yeah, or if there's like a Mira guy.
Oh, how do I kill that?
Yeah, like are you throwing your like nourishing emptiness into the Mira guy, spending like 2 cards to kill the Mira guy, then they just play like another dragon? Like that doesn't seem great. I don't
Ugh.
know.
Oh my god! If you have to like leave no witness the Mira guy, it's like your best option, I guess.
Yeah. And then how are you threatening the Droma? Are you like daggering them once and then playing Leave No Witness to clear their dragon? Like it doesn't
What?
sound good.
No, what they have to do is they have to play the new Snatch with Go again, or did they have to hit a hero? I forgot what that card is called.
Oh, Meeps. Mischievous Meeps. Does it have to hit a hero? I'm gonna look right now. Yeah, when this hits your hero, gain control of an item with cost 2 or less they control, otherwise draw a card. So it doesn't even draw off dragons. Sad.
Oh, so you have to play Snatch.
I guess. Yeah, I don't
That
know.
kind of that kind of feels bad too.
Yeah, I don't see a lot of good ways to fix that matchup, and it seems tough. Seems tough.
Yeah, it does. It does kind of seem a little doomed. Maybe there are some Missouris that like figured out that matchup a little bit better, and like made it closer to 50-50. But I can't imagine it ever being better than 50-50, even if you build two to beat that deck.
And then maybe the final deck that we should talk about as kind of like standing out and being in the top 8 is Katsu. Katsu doing pretty well. 29 Katsu, 6 of them day 2'd, 20% conversion, pretty decent. And then Katsu, 6 of them in the top 64, making up 9% of the top 64, 13% in the top 32. 13% of the top 32, 4 of them, 13% in the top 16, and then both of those that were in the top 16 also top 8ing. So this is kind of interesting to me. I'd like to kind of dig into those Katsu lists. At least I don't think they're public at the time of recording, or I haven't seen them just yet. I'm curious if they've figured something out, because it seems like there are a few Katsus that did very, very well, and I don't know if that's a matter of like they got paired into the Dromais and they got to like beat up the Dromais and that's why they did well, or they found a way to really like figure out that Lexi matchup and make it good for them. I'm not exactly sure what is going on there, but it is interesting to see Katsu's like a small number of players doing very, very well on this deck. And yeah, this is maybe the deck I'm the least confident about, but I feel like the more and more that people have been playing Katsu locally, even just like the scarier that deck gets, and that maybe it's just been one that takes a little bit more time to refine. And between it getting a little bit better each time and Lexi getting toned down just a little bit, like maybe Katsu is a real deck in this format. Reasonable into Bravo, reasonable into Dromai.
Looks like it is posted actually, the deck lists. Both the Katsu decks are playing very similar Descendant Gust Wave, Bonds of Ancestry lines. Both decks are playing Art of War. One of them playing 2, one of them playing 3. And there's an interesting card in one of the lists is Double Strike. I don't know what that's for. That might just be like a tech for some deck, but both of their deck looks kind of similar, playing Surging Strikes, Descendant Gust Wave, Bonds of Ancestry, Art of War, Command and Conquer, and most notably Warmonger's Diplomacy seems to be a card that's just standing out to me as like the newest addition to the deck. But
Yeah,
nothing really special, like nothing really different about this deck than its past versions, other than the Warmonger's Diplomacy.
yeah, that's a good point. Warmonger's Diplomacy probably a pretty big pickup for this deck since it's everything Katsu wants, 0 cost, blue, block 3, and then has a bunch of upside. So maybe just the bonus of Warmonger's Diplomacy being a premium blue in this deck is just enough to give this a little push that it needed, and maybe that makes it have a little bit of an edge in the Lexi matchup. I'm actually not totally sure. This is a matchup I haven't explored as much as I would have liked, but Katsu one to, I think, at least dig into and testing a little bit and prepare for, because again, 2 Katsus in top 8 seems real solid, and you got to at least respect this deck and have a plan into it, I think.
Anyone else you want to talk about before we maybe move on to the next news?
Maybe last, we should just kind of talk about a couple of the underperformers here.
Yeah, I guess we should do that. Yeah, we definitely should do that.
So I think Dromai not top 8ing stands out. And unlike Lexi, Dromai's stats aren't quite as glowing. So she was second most represented, 48 wins, 23% D2 conversion. So, sorry, 48 Dromais, 23% D2 conversion. So 11 of them made day 2, which is decent. Not incredible, but decent, like kind of right in the middle of the pack, similar to like Katsu, for example. But then when we look, there's 4 Dromais in the top 64. That makes up 6% of the top 64. 3 in the top 32 and 1 in the top 16. So
Oh, one in top 32.
1 in the top 30? No, 3 in the top 32, 1 in the top 16, 0 in the top 8. So I don't know exactly why this is. I think that there is like a little bit of tension where the red line Dromai lists are quite popular because they're good in the mirror, but I think that list struggles into Guardian a little bit, can struggle into Lexi if they have a whole bunch of ice cards, and honestly can struggle into Ninja as well, which we've been seeing. And I kind of think that all these decks are maybe just keeping Dromai down a little bit, because there was a lot of Guardian, a lot of Lexi, and a lot of Katsu in the top 64. And yeah, Dromai just had like honestly a pretty disappointing event. I wonder if Dromais are going to have to like change the way their deck's built a little bit, or if we're going to maybe see a little bit less Dromai going forward. I don't think this deck's going to disappear. People really like illusionists, and it's always kind of represented. But yeah, Dromai not having a great weekend here.
It's kind of, you know what? I kind of like that this data is here, just because like I was thinking of maybe bringing Dromai to Calling Vegas, and I think after looking at this, it makes me want to play that deck less. And then the more time it takes me to convince myself that I probably should be on Dromai, the less likely they'll play it because then I won't have any playtesting on it. So this is a good thing for me, and this is pulling me more towards Bravo.
Yeah, absolutely. And then maybe the final deck that I want to talk about, I kind of mentioned at the start, but Levia. Levia was the fifth most represented deck, 39 Levias. For reference, there was 44 Bravos and 29 Katsus. Comparing to those decks, 5 Levias made day 2, which is already disappointing. That's 13% day 2 conversion. And then Levia in top 64, there was 2 Levias. One of them had 7 match points, and one of them had 8 match points. That's it. For a deck that highly represented, to me, that says that there's something wrong. Like maybe like we had the discussion about Lexi and like what's behind that data, and I think that that's a little bit unclear. But I think if this many players are bringing Levia and not getting results, it either means that this deck isn't good enough, the meta's not right for it, or people haven't found the right build yet. But there's clearly something not working here in my eyes. If this is how the deck performed, it's just really quite poor. And it's not like I guess I don't know everybody who registered Levia, but like we saw Matt Folks on stream playing Levia. So it's not like there were no strong Levia players. Like I don't know how much he's practiced that deck, but he's definitely an accomplished player that was on Levia. So yeah, just really having kind of a disappointing weekend after I think a lot of people were excited about this deck and interested in all the powerful things she could do. So I don't know. If you're planning to bring Levia for the upcoming national season, I think you have a lot of work ahead of you and a lot to figure out because this particular weekend really didn't look good for Levia in my eyes.
Oh yeah, it looked really bad. It's kind of a good thing for me. Like the three, like the two heroes that I was like heavily considering was like Leviah and Dromai, as a contention to bring for the calling. And looking at these data points, it's like pushing me away from them and more into Bravo again. So I'm like, after this episode, I kind of think I know where I'm gonna be. I think I'm just gonna be like a stockless Bravo player at the calling, and I'm just gonna force people to prove to me that they can prove. I'm gonna force people to prove to me that they can beat the Bravo. To continue on with their calling.
Yeah, and I think that that's honestly a really strong place to be. Like Guardian has that like that's like very powerful when you're just like I just get to do my thing and you need to figure out how to win is really strong.
Yeah, that's like how Oldham was, I just like sat
Hmm.
there and I was like, "Can you beat me?" No? Well, I'm gonna do this very slightly above rate things every turn until you die. And a lot of decks, or not even a lot of decks, but like a lot of players fail to show me that they can beat it. So it'll be interesting. You know what? I think you've convinced me, Yuki. I know you didn't do anything in particular, but I think I'm gonna be on Bravo now.
There you go. Jay's sold. Bravo player. Finally, I feel like you've always been like you kind of like Guardian, but you're like maybe I like other decks. You never want to be like, yeah, I'm a Guardian player, but I feel like you're such a Guardian player, Jay.
I just, I, the
You like
thing is,
consistency, you like pitch stacking, you like blues and 3 blocks, like you like equipment. How is Guardian not just like the perfect deck for you?
so the problem is, I do like all of those things, but it's not because they're I don't like it because it's so consistent and stuff like that. I just like sitting there and playing the game for a very prolonged period of time. And Bravo is not a deck that lets you just like sit there and wait for your opponent to deck out. It's a deck where you have to attack people, and that's why I don't really like Bravo, where I have to hit my opponent, which isn't something that I like doing.
So it's not defensive enough.
Correct. It's like I wish all of my cards would block for 4, so I can just turn off my brain and put one card per every card they put down on their table, and then they can't ever beat me. That would be great. Like, please, like print something that does that. Just fatigues and game life.
Ugh, yuck.
Right before we move on, just a small thing. I'm kind of disappointed that Vincent and Prism, like the two new heroes from the set, Dust Till Dawn, performed very bad. Um, looks like both of them had 0 that made day 2, like 0 copies that made day 2. How do you feel about this? Like, just like it's like clearly just the deck's not good enough. Maybe it's like someone needs to break it still, but like clearly it's not good enough right now.
Yeah. Vincent is a deck that I spent some time on, and it can do some powerful things, but that mandatory banish clause is just such a detriment in the late game. And I think Prism's life being 32 is really hard. Being able to beat like popper heavy decks and aggro decks is really hard. And it kind of feels like to me, it kind of, I don't know if this is like actually the case, but it almost feels like LSS has like dialed back the power level a little bit on some of the new heroes. Like we had some like Monarch, we had like Chain and Prism, then Tails, we had like Briar, who was nerfed multiple times, then Oldham, and then like Lexi came into her own, and then we had like Phi was really crazy, Starvo was really crazy, Icelander was really good, Dromai's been strong. Like we've had all these really really powerful heroes, and then like we got to Outsiders, and it's like Riptide is like kind of been a big nothing. Uzuri is like maybe the most successful one, but like still feels notably weaker than all of those previous sets that I mentioned. And then like Vincent and Prism probably even like weaker than Azuri as far as I can tell, at least right now. So I don't know. Maybe there's something to these heroes. I do think that they're complex to build, but it does feel like they've kind of maybe. I wonder if they maybe played it a little bit too safe for these heroes. I kind of hope I'm wrong. Like maybe there's something coming for them that will bump them up and give them what they need. But yeah, they do feel a little bit.
A little bit on the weaker side, yeah. I just I wish Vincent's ability was not mandatory and optional, like to
Mhm.
banish a card from hand, and then Vincent would be like so much better. But we can't really choose now, so we gotta accept the fact that they got printed this way.
Yeah, and like I kind of get it with Prism. Like Prism's text box is really powerful. Being able to like tutor for these figments that have, give you ward and give you effects when they enter is really strong. And being able to like instant speed Halo to give all your opponent's attacks -1, or, flip a card and banish face down, or just like all these different points of interaction that Prism can do like for free off of Halo. Well, not for free, but, very low cost off Halo is like really, really strong. She can do a lot of really, really good stuff. And I kind of understand like, why maybe they were being careful there, but it just feels like, I don't know, feels like a little bit of a miss to me, at least so far. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe somebody will solve something. I think that there's some interesting stuff the hero can do, but 32 life is just so little life.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, I think that's everything that we want to talk about calling Birmingham. Uh, just before we completely move on from this, was there anything we missed?
Is there anything we missed? Is there anything else that we're talking about this episode?
I just wanted to talk about the new set Bright Lights.
Yeah, true. I kind of forgot that this got announced.
Yeah, I did too, and then I was on the FabTCG website, and it just like popped into my face and said Bright Lights. Here's the set. So yeah, let's just talk about this like real quick. Like not even about like I think the most important, or at least as a limited podcast, there is a new, what is it called? A new way to play a game?
Yeah, I guess it's like a new format
New format? It only works with this set though.
for now.
For now, okay. Well, I guess dial back real quick. Bright Lights is the next Flesh and Blood expansion that's coming out. looks like it is going to be a draftable set with 16 cards per pack, which means 1 token and 15 playables.
I believe it's 14 playables. Am I wrong? I feel like I heard people complaining about 14 cards. So
Oh
maybe it's
no,
two
is it
tokens?
14? Is it 2 tokens still?
It's two tokens.
No.
But but that might be a little less painful in this set.
And one of the tokens can be replaced with something called an expansion slot, which is a card that is not part of the set, but a reprint card that can be anything, from what I understand.
Yeah, they've said that it could be a reprint or it could be a way to give. They said it could be a way to give classes support that doesn't go into the set. So it's like sort of like doing a supplemental set without having a whole supplemental set, which is kind of a cool idea. But like that means that these have to be L's, right? Because the rate, like at least at the current rate, because they said that's like 1 per 15 packs. So you can't introduce like a common that has like a cycle of pitches and it's like it appears in a slot that only has a card in it, 1 in 15 packs, and then you like also have to hit that card. Like you can't just like do you
Well,
know what I mean?
they can make it a M, right? Like M's are reasonable, I think.
Maybe, yeah, maybe
Like,
M's would be reasonable, but I feel like some cards would not.
or they could just say like, or they could put like an equipment piece
Yeah,
or a
equipment.
legendary card.
Hmm, hmm.
Like a
Yeah,
legendary Reinar card might be cool.
yeah. I definitely think it lets them do some cool stuff, and yeah, I don't know, it makes a lot of sense. I think I mentioned this before. I don't know if it was on the podcast, but I was like, they should just put like tunics in packs at very low drop rates for like until the prices are reasonable.
Yeah, and that's exactly what they're doing. One of the key cards getting reprinted is Fendel's Spring Tunic. So you can technically open a tunic in one of these packs. I'm assuming there's gonna be a lot of different cards in this slot, so it's gonna be like let's say there's like 10 different cards in this slot. It's at least 1 in 150, and it's gonna be rarer than that. So like opening up a tunic in one of these sets is gonna be like immensely hard, right? It's gonna be harder than trying to open a tunic in WTR.
Yeah, for sure. It's not going to happen all the time, but I think it's the kind of thing where if they keep doing this, like over time, it will theoretically lower the price, or at very least, like help stabilize the price if the game continues to grow, where there's at least like some new supply coming in rather than just like we still have the same amount of tunics and there's more and more people joining the game. So, like, I think it's a nice way to help. I don't know like exactly what the sweet spot is for like how much they should print. That LSS obviously has way more data about that than we could ever imagine having. But yeah, it's a cool way to do it, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And let's just talk about the limited portion of the set. So, starting actually with the pre-release. The pre-release is going to be on September 29th, so this is going to be after the all the nationals are done. And you're only going to get 4 packs. And why is that?
Well, because this set takes place in metrics, and there are only mechanologists in this set. There are 3 different mechanologists. There's Dash, who by the art looks like is maybe a new Dash. I'm not sure. Maybe we get a different Dash hero. Same character, but like maybe kind of like how Starvo had like a different text box. We have, what is his name?
Teklovozen.
Teklovozen, who we can read his text box really quickly.
Sure, I got it
He's
up.
okay.
Oh,
Go for it.
yeah. So Teklovozen, esteemed magnate, says you may play Evos from your banished zone, whatever that means. And it says once per turn instant, 3 resources. You may play your next Evo this turn as though it were an instant. When you do, draw a card.
And we have seen one Evo. So the Evo that we've seen is Evo Steel Soul Memory. It is a blue 4 cost block 3, and it's a mechanologist action equipment. And it says if you have a base head equipped, transform it into this and equip this. When this transforms from or into an Evo with a different name, your hero gets +1 intellect until end of turn. It looks like there's some text that's maybe censored out and not being revealed. And then it has temper. So this is like a temper 3 headpiece that is a blue block 3 that you can potentially play at instant speed and draw a card, which is like all very fascinating. There also seem to be cards that like get stronger effects the more evos that you have. So maybe you can kind of like, I don't know, build your own mecha hero where you keep equipping all these evos and have all this temper armor and power up and then hit them with really above rate stuff.
It's kind of funny. The base heads, uh, the base head, arm, leg, whatever, all of those are all tokens. So you always get to start with them on the board, so you can never miss on them. You don't have to draft them. I think there are the rare versions in the set, I think, that you might be able to draft like upgraded versions of them already, but the token variants are all no block, do nothing, just placeholder equipments, at least
Yeah.
for now. Yeah.
And then it looks like the rare. We've seen promos, so we don't know the exact rarity on these, but there's a cycle of them that are one block blade break. So they're basically like iron rot for mech, but you can upgrade them into these evos and maybe other stuff. And being able to play them from banish is like kind of cool because, well, at the very least, we know that mechanologists can boost, which puts cards into banish. So if you like boost this evo, you can later flash it out and temper 3 is really strong and yeah, it costs 4, but like I don't know, seems pretty good.
Yeah, we'll have to see when the set comes out. Not until a long time from now. And I guess last thing is they're gonna do it. I think because there's a one class set, they have this new format called Crack, Shuffle, and Play, and it's a way to play where you get 3 packs and you just shuffle those 3 packs up and play. It's kind of sick.
Yeah, so it's kind of like sealed, but you don't have to do any of the deck building process, so it'd be very fast to play and probably like a pretty nice way to get into the game, which I think is a really cool idea. Yeah, I think more accessible ways to play Flesh and Blood is just good for the game, and why not take the opportunity to introduce that when you have a set that is already set up in this way.
This kind of thing, you just kind of skip the drafting process. The one thing I do kind of wish for is that just no matter what happens, please do not make this the format of limited for the Pro Tour or something like that. Just imagine if they make you play Crack Shuffle and Play for like 6 rounds at a
For
PT or
Worlds,
something. Yeah, Worlds.
I think Worlds they already said is going to be draft, but I'm actually really excited about this set for draft. Granted that we know almost nothing, but I think that like having only mech sounds really cool because I think a lot of the like complaints that people sometimes have or like the stuff that we talk about where like you can only go so far before you have to lock in a class because like you need to draft 30 cards and you can only play cards within your hero. Like in this set you can just play every single card that gets open. Like you will never wind up with baubles. It's impossible.
Whoa. I'm pretty sure you can still technically play baubles if you want to.
I guess you could technically play baubles if you want to, but like you'll never have to play baubles, which is pretty cool. And like I think does a lot to open up the draft format. You can probably stay open much longer. They've kind of said that like they each have different mechanics. There's like a new crank mechanic, which we don't know what that is. There's like an item mechanic, and then there's like the gearing up Evo mechanic. And they say that they can all use aspects of it. Like we kind of see that with Teklo Vesson, where he like if you boost stuff, you can then play the Evos, which is pretty sweet. So yeah, I'm really excited for this. It seems like an interesting format. I have no idea how it will play, but it's intriguing.
I think the one complaint that I have of this set already, just I already know this is a complaint I'm gonna have. Teklo Vesson is a majestic in this set. Why?
Maybe he's in the expansion slot.
That makes it even worse.
Does it?
It, okay, it's kind of hard to get these heroes. I know they're dirt cheap. It's like, but it still means you gotta pay 50 cents for these heroes. Like, it kind of sucks. Like, just print it a token. Just put it on the other side of the young Teklo Vesson. Just make
You
it
know what?
easy
You're
to get.
so right. I hate opening these cards too. I hate getting a majestic and being like, ah, it's a hero.
It's just like
Another
opening.
hero. I don't need it. I already have one. Like, what am I ever gonna do with another hero? It's never like I don't want to say it's not important, but like, yeah, it just doesn't feel good to open.
Like opening Icelander right now feels like the worst thing you can open as a Majestic.
Yeah, that is super super true. Okay, I'm with you. Or like, what about if you open Genius? What you need?
They're kind of cool, but but like if it's draftable in the set, at least just make it a token, please. That's all I had to say.
That's totally fair. It looks like the young one is a token, but the
Yeah.
adult one is a Majestic, which is like, anyways, that sure is a decision.
It's kind of fair though. Like when you're drafting though, the adult versions of the cards and the tokens, that's kind of annoying because it could have been like the weapon you needed for that draft or something like that. But like now that it's like actually in the main set and you have to like open it, it kind of feels worse because we had it for free for so long.
That's fair.
Okay, I think we talked enough. Let's wrap it up.
Yeah, so thanks everyone for listening. I hope that you are excited about the upcoming set and feeling excited for your upcoming national season. There's a lot of organized play on the horizon, and I think nationals is always kind of like a cool and exciting season that a lot more people get to enjoy with, get engaged with, than maybe something like a pro tour. So hopefully you're feeling a little bit inspired about getting testing and getting prepared for those upcoming events. And hopefully this episode helped you out a little bit with that. Let us know what your thoughts about the upcoming meta are. Is there anything that we missed or didn't talk about, heroes that you think are maybe really good that we didn't touch on? We admittedly didn't talk about all the heroes. There's just so many to talk about, but we kind of highlighted some of the ones that we thought were important, but maybe we missed some. We'd love to hear about all of that in the comments. If you want to get in touch with us, you can contact Jay at UedaJ on Twitter, or is it called? I guess it's called X now.
Oh yeah, it's called. They changed the name to X.
Yeah, at UedaJ on X, and you can. This is going to take a bit to get used to, or you can you can follow me on X. Is it still called follow?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think they changed any terms on the platform.
Okay. You can follow me on X at Yuki Lee Bender, or you can email us directly at onthebauble@gmail.com and send us your questions and feedback directly there. Until next time, have a good night and good luck getting ready for Nats. I just I just realized the thing about X all of a sudden. I'm like, wait a second.
Yeah, it is. It's not Twitter. Twitter disappeared. The blue bird is gone now.
It's so weird. I don't know if I like it.
You'll get used to it in like 2 weeks. Things change so quickly. Elon Musk is a sicko. Is all I have to say.
Yeah, for sure.
Nice.
Whew.